Hi, you. It's me, Nicole for Nick Star, and this is the Nick Star podcast. I had a huge reflection when I was moving recently. I was having a conversation with this guy who my daughter, boyfriend, cousin, who helped us move a couple of my bed and stuff. Not my bed, Leo's bed. And he said how much he hated moving, how he moved once with his parents when he was a kid, and once out of his parents into his home now with his girlfriend, and never again. And I said, oh, when I was in my 30s, I had counted that I'd moved 35 times or something, and then I stopped counting. And he looked at me like I was a freak. And I said, I had one home that I lived in for 12 years and another home that I lived in for 6 years as a kid. And since then, I was just like gypsy. And he just was like, oh, you're freaking me out. Anyway, that led on to a whole lot of other contemplations around my fierce desire during my life about not owning a home and how far out of a conditioned reality that is, because, society still has this projection that, we grow up and get a job and buy a house. And, that's more and more difficult in this era because of the price of housing and, getting a mortgage and all those things. And, lots of people manage it in their own way, but they are really tied to that in a way that freaks me out. And, one of my greatest values in life is freedom and adventure, and it's so fascinating. Like, I have owned a house once and I thought, this is what brings security. You've always got a home. And I owned that house outright. Um, so, I didn't even have a mortgage. I had a small loan on it with a family member, but it wasn't like a bank pressure, and it wasn't a lot each month that I had to pay back to them. And, it was just before COVID, and I tried to convince myself that, I'll always have a home to come back to, even if I wanted to go out wandering, I could rent it out and all of these things. And it really didn't work. I, tried to convince myself the conditioned belief that it brings a sense of security and safety and stability. And ultimately, I just felt trapped. Like, I felt so trapped. And even like when I did sell it, when I decided I did want to sell it, like, it took so long. I mean, I didn't really, but just even the process of, getting all of the paperwork prepared. And, I'm so used to deciding I want to go somewhere else and being able to execute that in weeks and sometimes months, if, that's a timeline that has to happen. And that kind of annoys me because I like things to happen quickly once I've made a decision. Um, and people are like, Don't you just wanna, like, un when you're renting, you can't paint a wall or put a nail in a wall and all of that." And I'm like, "Well, you can." There's been so many times I've done, like, mini renovations in homes, and had a conversation with the owner, and they've either been open to it or not. And 3M have these amazing products now where you can put a hook on the wall and then take it off and it leaves no marks. And I actually used a whole heap of different 3M things in my last house and they came off just stunningly. I was really impressed. Um, and I realized, like over the years, I've lived in so many beautiful homes and I've stayed in extraordinary places. And there's no way in the world I would ever have that experience if I had to buy them. Like, I just couldn't, like, obviously in Bali, it's a whole other world. And I've been able to live in some incredible, beautiful villas. And when we lived in India, I decided we were living in Goa and it was actually colonized by the Portuguese. And so there's this completely different architecture. There's these Portuguese villas, old Portuguese villas there, and they're just beautiful. And when I first got to India, I was in a health crisis and I took a small apartment just to cut costs and to insulate myself. And then I healed myself and I was so in love with these Portuguese villas. And so I rented one for 2 months and lived in this dreamy movie kind of, it was wild. And, um, and even like the house I was just living in when I first came back to Australia, it was a $1.8 million house. And getting to live in beautiful places can only happen if you rent them. Um, unless you spend your whole life paying off one or whatever. Like, I don't know. I love filling my life with incredible experiences, and it's been something that is really expanded every part of me. Um, is by choosing a place for that season, for that era, and being able to step in and grow into that. And I don't know, like the only time I'd ever buy anything is I had like a ridiculous amount of money and I bought it as a part-time house and a stream of income. But, like, I don't know, it's so, but dealing with tenants is not always fun. I rented out my house in Bali once and it wasn't cared for or maintained in the way that I would. And it was a big kind of drama afterwards to deal with that. And I know when we first moved into our house here in Australia, there was so many maintenance issues and my real estate's like, oh my God, the homeowner is just really freaking out about all these costs. And I was like, yep, well, when you have an investment property, that's what happens. people say, investing in property, you get so much return, but then you've got to buy something else at that market value. I don't know. I just don't align with owning stuff. And it fulfills my values of freedom and adventure and the ability to live in extraordinary places that I never would have the opportunity with, being a single solo parent. And I just haven't, I've never had an outrageous amount of income to be able to own homes. And yeah, it's just such a fascinating thing. Now that I've become a professional house sitter, it's even going to be a whole other realm of reality. Um, and people are like, oh, don't you just want your own home? I'm like, no, I don't. It's it it's interesting. I said to Leo yesterday. So now that, we're kind of settled in here, because next year I'm house sitting this house most of the year, and I will just come and go when the owners come back for the few weeks here and there and month here and there. So we actually have our own rooms in their home. They were just kind of spare storage rooms, and I said when we were having discussions, I want to put my room in it and Leo's room in the other. And they're like, oh, you can use our main bedroom. I'm like, no, I want to take out just, that, and I'll just leave them. Yeah, you know. And they're like, wow, okay. So we do have our own space as that, which is very, very fortunate. And he goes, yeah, it really feels like home now. And I said, yeah, it felt like that for me today too. Um, and I said that, we kind of get into routines, and having kind of a basic routine and familiar kind of habits and even ceremony and ritual that I do each day, I can come and go anywhere, and life feels incredibly stable. And there's a sense of security that comes from those routines. I nourish and nurture myself. I move my body, and they're pretty similar every day. And that really forges a foundation of security. It's it's very simple. Like, it doesn't come from a roof and four same walls. Um, I don't know, people think I'm brave and all of this stuff, and it's not that difficult. It's really not. I have one kind of bag that has all my kitchen things in it. So I have my beautiful pans that I cook in, and I have, my little measuring things, and I have like a kitchen bag that I can go anywhere. And I've done this so many times, like traveling. I'm able to stay with my routines and all of that when I need to, and it doesn't throw you out at all. And it's just a matter of like finding that thing that works for you. Um, and this is something that I have taught people, and, particularly the recent immersion and other people. It's like showing them how to show up every day, even while traveling, no matter whether you need to go and spend time with anyone, go and see family for a week or something. You can still show up for yourself, that it doesn't throw you out of your usual life. And in that, the trade off and the reward is freedom, adventure, curiosity, and all of that. And I know not everyone values that. They like their kind of sameness and it makes them feel comfortable. And, one of the things that I realized some months ago is that I was feeling very comfortable and that freaked me out. I was like, oh, this is where like stagnancy settles in, and we think we want to be comfortable so that we can, not have any pressure in our life. And, it's the pressure on the coal that makes the diamonds. And ultimately, what it is space for expansion and growth and regeneration and all of that. And so I went down this memory lane of all the places I've lived and gone, and my life has always really felt like slow travel. Um, and that's my favorite thing. Like, even, when I've gone somewhere for 6 days or 14 days, and flown halfway across the world to get there, I still act like I'm slow traveling, and I buy the things I need and spend a lot of time in the place that I've booked, because it's about experiencing that place and not just somewhere to sleep and run around on a tourist bus. I go so many places, people say, did you see this? Did you do that? I'm like, no. They're like, oh my God, you were there. Why didn't you go? And I'm like, I wasn't there for that. I didn't go there for that. Like, once I went to India for 6 days to simply go and sit with Muji. And that's what I did. I spent a lot of time in my hotel room right on the Ganga, overlooking the river, looking up at the sacred mountain. Hired a bike, rode to Muji twice a day, chilled out. I didn't buy food. I ate the Indian food because living in India, I know where and how and what to do to nourish and nurture myself. Yeah. There's no sense of needing a vacation or having to go on a holiday, or needing a vacation when you get home from vacation, or needing to rest after a crazy holiday. That whole thing seems so common these days. Like, I remember as a kid, we used to go away to rest, to go away to kind of, I don't know, days felt so long. My intention always is to feel the richness of each moment, because time does fly so fast in this busy world where we're doing the next thing, doing the next thing, doing the next thing, doing the next thing. And then there's a richness to being present in each moment. And you get to experience so much more by being present in that moment. It actually works much better than packing in a billion things, and you don't end up exhausted. And I forget sometimes, school run at the moment is very long and my days feel much shorter. But what's actually shorter is just the time between school drop off and just school pick up, because I have to travel further. So I've recognized that. I've started listening to the podcasts that I used to listen to on my walks, either on the bike or in a car, because I am very fortunate to have a car right now, which I use when it's either this week's so funny. Monday, it was 41 degrees, and the thought of being on that bike I was melting me at the thought of it. The next day when I picked up from school in the car, because it was pouring rain, like torrential rain, it was 21 degrees. 20 degrees difference in one day. But we're back on the bike now because the weather has settled again. And I could put one earpiece in and ride through the hinterland when there's hardly any cars, and I get to ride through windy mountainous roads, tree covered, and at times it kind of almost feels like I'm riding through the hills, the mountains of Bali, and I just go in hard into the corners and just have the most wonderful rides. And I love it. I get to have freedom and expansion and joy twice a day, rather than the burden of half-hour rides to and half-hour rides back without running into any traffic or having to wait in any car parks for any slow-moving children. So really reminding myself of that. It's fascinating how I adore the slowness of such variety and how those kind of feel contradictive, but for me, they're everything. So also having another conversation this week with some perimenopause ladies and how they were starting to get different symptoms, and one of them was the menorrhage, and finding that there's just kind of this outburst and it's quite startling to themselves and generally their child, as well as the heat fluctuations. And I said, there is no magic patch, there is no magic potion, and there is no magic pill. It is the call of your body to learn how to navigate life with different levels of hormones that aren't going to go back to the way they used to be. It is about a self-honoring and understanding that that rage comes because the progesterone you used to have is no longer there and will never be there. And you can pump yourself up with hormones, but it's not sustainable and it changes you. And you don't feel like yourself. And it's, realize it can have quite an effect on your mental. A lot of women, know that when they're on birth control that they aren't themselves. And it's like anything. It alters you, it changes you, and you never know how your body is going to respond when you're adding things in. Can be a bridge, but ultimately learning the intimacy of this new era. And it really is a rite of passage. And so these symptoms are messengers. They are telling you that you cannot hit beast mode. You can't ignore things and just push through. None of that is natural. And although we've been able to do it for eons, in our 20s and 30s, it's just not possible now. And it really looks about looking at how much energy you have in the tank. Because when that tank gets too low, you rage. And it's just because you're trying to do too much. And the thing is, if you are self-honoring and you are present, that energy will regenerate and you will have more than enough to do all the things. It's when you're rushing around in a way that isn't natural or kind. It's just out of balance, out of alignment, and finding that healthy relationship with yourself, that true intimacy that brings you into alignment, you'll find you'll have more than enough energy because it regenerates itself when you're in alignment and you're not overgiving, you're not overmothering, you're not overdoing, and you're not pushing through, you're not freaking beast moding. You'll get knocked on your ass and ultimately knocked to your knees. And that is where we humble ourselves and honor the journey forward. So that is all I have for you today. Thank you so much for listening. I am so grateful. Please feel free to share with anyone that you may feel benefits. My website is www.nickstar.com, NIKSTARR. Much love. Mwah.